This entire fall, we've been looking about enlarging our capacity for joy in our lives, looking at the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Many of you have read the book, and a number of you have remarked to me how much the book has meant to you. So if you haven't read it, it's not too late. It's a wonderful way to deepen your own spirituality. And today, in a somewhat lighthearted manner, Jorge and I want to share with you the practice of joy. We've talked about the 8 pillars over the last number of weeks, and today we're each going to take 4 pillars and talk about how we are going to practice those in our lives, or at least try to practice those. And we're going to do it by, in the best way we can, opening our lives to you just a little bit this morning. Our struggles with incorporating more joy in our lives. Hopefully in a way that then you might invite your own journey to deepen and to take a practice or two of your own with one of the pillars and practice that through Advent and see what happens. I love that reading this morning. Joy is an expansive quality of presence. It's saying yes to life. And know that joy is rarer, more difficult, and more beautiful than sadness. So together, let's open to more joy in our lives. And if you are in mourning this morning, know that, as the psalmist said, mourning lasts for a night, but joy will come. So, I'll begin with humility, because apparently Jorge didn't think he needed any humility.
Yeah, that's true.
He gave me this one.
Yeah.
So humility recognizes that our gifts are from God. And we want to celebrate others' gifts without denying our own. We want to let our own light shine and also make space for other people's light to shine. When thinking about humility, I went back to reading more about it and the sermon I preached on it. And what I really want to bring up today is that, from the great Buddhist teacher, humility very simply is the absence of arrogance. And where there is no arrogance, you relate with your world as an eye-level situation without one-upmanship. Without one-upmanship, there can be genuine exchange. I love that eye level. That's how you relate to people. Someone who is vertically challenged, it's often difficult for me to relate on an eye level. But soulfully, emotionally, spiritually, to be able to do that is to truly practice humility, which opens more space for joy. And so my practice that I want to try is, where I need more humility in my life, is in talking to people who have different political views than I do. Because I confess that is the easiest place for me to feel superior. Are you going to leave me up here by myself in this?
I was going to suggest fill out a blue card. And,
okay.
You know.
So I want to practice more humility, more eye level with people, and sometimes I don't even know them, they're just on the news. With people who hold different political views than I do. Because when I don't do that, I am really blocking joy.
Acceptance. The Dalai Lama says, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? So one of the things I know I have to accept is that every time I preach with Reverend Penny, I'm always going to be on this side of the podium and maybe not use that side of the chancel. So I will accept that. But no, seriously. Just recently, a couple weeks ago actually, I learn that my premium health care is going to double than the original cost I have been paying for the past couple years. And that is very upsetting because there is no way that I could afford to pay for that coverage. So I jumped into conclusion and just realized I will not have health care until who knows how long. And was very, very depressed about that. And I spent quite a few nights just in my head trying to figure out, well, how can I possibly get to a place in my life where I could afford health care? Where can I maybe find more work? Where can I maybe find other possibilities or resources to help me cover my health care? And I would go in circles over and over in my head, losing sleep over this, wondering, why is this happening to me? Someone who I feel has done my best and played the game very well to be where I'm at. The least I deserve is some health care. So completely stressed and full of anxiety, and acceptance is tough. Is the ability to accept life, our life, and all its point, its pain, imperfection, and beauty, according to Douglas Abrams. It is not resignation, we know. It is not defeat, we have learned. It is accepting that we must necessarily pass through whatever storm I know we may be going through. It is facing suffering and asking the question, how can I use this as something positive? So I know for myself, Rev, my goal to help me bring more joy in this area these days is to remember that acceptance allows me to engage life on its own terms rather than wishing in vain that things were different. And I know that if I begin to do this, this will enable me to change and adapt rather than becoming mired in denial, despair, and anxiety. And if things don't go well for me, I can accept that too and move on with my life. This, I believe, needs to be my focus in order to experience more joy.
Humor. Open to humor. If you haven't heard Marge Boyd's sermon on humor, check it out. It will bring you joy. So I'll just talk about humor by sharing a short story. There was a young monk who arrived at the monastery, and he was assigned, along with other monks, to copy the canons and the laws of the church by hand. Now, he noticed as he was doing this, and he was trying to be a good monk, as he was doing this, that he was making copies of copies. So he went to the abbot, and he said, Abbot, just think about it. If there were one small error early on, no one would have picked it up, and we're just making the same error over and over again. And the abbot said, well, that's how we've been doing it for centuries. And the monk said, that's my point. And the abbot said, all right, well, you do have a good point. So the abbot said, I'm going to go down and check that out. So the abbot goes down underneath the monastery into the recesses of the caves. And he goes down in this kind of labyrinth of caves, and he's looking. That's where the original manuscripts are held. And he's down there, and hours go by, and all of a sudden the young monk starts to get worried about the abbot. He hasn't seen him all day. He gets worried enough, and he goes down into the recesses, down into the caves. He's looking and looking for the abbot, and he hears a noise, and he finally turns a corner, and there's the abbot, banging his head against the cave wall, crying uncontrollably. And the monk said, Father, what's wrong? And the abbot said, the word was celebrate, not celibate.
Oh, that answers a lot of questions, right?
So my practice for humor is not to take myself so seriously. I want you to take me seriously, but I'm not going to take myself quite so seriously. And I want to smile more, and you can remind me of that.
Perspective. For every event in life, says the Dalai Lama, there are many different angles. And most of you know that I'm a huge NFL fan, that I love my sports. And in particular, I'm an Oakland Raider fan. And well, let's just say this year, the Raiders haven't been doing as expected. There were sayings that they might even make it to the Super Bowl. Well, that hasn't, I don't think it's even going to come close for that to happen. So I've been really down about that. I've been really just upset and sad.
I feel your pain, yeah.
But then I remember there's another NFL Bay Area team who's doing much worse. Who have just won one game. And there is perhaps no greater route to joy than knowing that, Rev. To know that another football team is doing much worse than my team. But I do have to say that I commute from San Jose, because that's where I live, and so I experience quite an amount of traffic. And I get very frustrated with my commute. And once again, I tend to ask myself, why do I have to live so far? Why do I have to commute so far? In order to have more perspective in life, truly it's taking a God's eye perspective, as Archbishop Tutu says. And he goes on to say that for him, it allows him, that the reason for that is for the birth of empathy, which is so true. Because when I am stuck in that traffic, I remember how many people I know actually commute from Los Baños, from Tracy, from Manteca, from who knows how far up north. And then I also remember many of these people have families, kids, and I have no kids, and how much more stressed I might be for those people. And I can't even fathom having those commutes from the Central Valley to work to the Bay Area. And this has and does help me open up to the lives and perspective of others when I put myself in that position. And I will then learn how to be open to other people's experiences and their own sufferings and the hardships with community. And this will help me remember that I am not alone in the challenges of commuting to work, which could easily be over an hour at times. And I know that in nurturing perspective and allowing myself to see the world in a larger way, it will open up the door for joy to come into my life. Go Raiders.
Generosity. The strongest predictor of happiness is the quality of our relationships. And generosity is the key to those relationships. I believe that with all my heart. And it was just a few weeks ago that I read an article referring primarily to your most intimate relationships and most beloved and closest in your life. And in that article, there were some quizzes. And one was on how generous are you in your relationship. And I consider myself to be a very generous person and that I value relationships above all in my life. And I took this quiz and I only came out as average. I hate to be average. And I was really pained, actually, about that. With the person and people I love the most, that I was not as generous as I thought I was. generous of spirit, generous of time. And so my commitment, my closest relationships, and to you, is to be more generous. Just simply with my love and my spirit, my time, my attention, because I know that will bring a lot more joy to me and to others.
Forgiveness. Yesterday, I was at a funeral service for a former pastor of mine, actually my first pastor. And it was at a church that maybe some of you remember. I was part of a fundamentalist church from 1998 to 2003. So I hadn't been in touch with this pastor for probably 14 years. Yet throughout this whole time, I never forgave her because she did, and her partner, it was a co-pastor church, did a lot of harm in my life. And a lot of the embedded theology that I still carry with me, I haven't been able to let go. And so last week, I got a phone call from her daughter sharing with me that her mom had passed away, which was my pastor. And just a week before that, I had been thinking about how much I would love to visit with them as a way to reconcile the past, and also as a way not to personally ask her for forgiveness in the way she had harmed me with some bad theology, but just also to forgive her personally so I could move on and find some peace in my own life. And so that was very difficult for me to know that I never had the opportunity to visit with her and to reconcile that relationship. And so it was a really hard day for me yesterday to be there and to celebrate her life, because I was full of regret at the same time, knowing again that I hadn't forgiven her. Forgiveness does not mean that we forget. It's what we have learned. Not reacting with negativity or giving in to the negative emotions does not mean that you do not respond to the acts or that you allow yourself to be harmed again, says the Dalai Lama. And so I know for me, what I have learned or am learning, until I forgive a person that has wronged me, I allow that person to hold power over me. And that has been so true for me the past 14 years. To effectively control my emotions. Forgiveness allows past hurts to recede into the distance where they stop becoming an impediment to a joyful life. So my intention is to not let time pass by and forgive others before it's too late.
Compassion. The Buddha says, what is the one thing which when you possess, you have all other virtues? Compassion. In my practice for compassion, I think I was born with the empathy gene. It's easy for me to be empathic with people's pain, to feel compassion. Where I really struggle is self-compassion. I don't have a lot of self-compassion. And when I don't have self-compassion, it makes me more judgmental towards other people. That's just the way it works. And so my practice is going to be that I'm going to work on being more self-compassionate. Being more compassionate with my body as it ages. More compassionate with my frailties and flaws, which are multiple. More self-compassionate just about what I am able to do and not do in my life.
Gratitude. So at the end of the day, I believe gratitude is fundamental to joy. It quite literally allows us to generate our own happiness. Gratitude, writes Douglas Abrams, is the recognition of all that holds us in the web of life and all that has made it possible to have the life that we have in the moment that we are experiencing. And for me, this means that this allows us to shift our focus from what we lack to what we have. If acceptance is not fighting reality, gratitude means embracing it, counting blessings rather than burdens. And I know for myself, it is easy for my mind to have a negative bias. I tend to point out what is wrong or what is not going well in my life. Easily forgetting of where I come from and the challenges I have had in the past and how much life is much better than it was for me. So I know that I need to work on being conscious of this and purposeful in my gratitude, because I know that my time on earth is limited. Why waste it by admiring myself in negativity, right? So I need to remember that gratitude also connects me to others, because I know that when I'm truly grateful, I remember all of those who have helped me make my happiness possible, who have brought goodness into my life. I know when I do that, I will then be able to recognize those people and enjoy them and their differences as well. And in this way, I can be made joyful by the world and people around me instead of finding myself filled with anger and despair. And to end, I know for me, I see a theme emerge from the pillars we have just talked about. Joy truly comes from togetherness, from realizing that we are all part of the human community. No one can exist in isolation. No one can be happy in isolation, much less find their joy. No, joy comes from participating in the human story in a positive way, becoming aware of reality, having compassion, as Reverend Penny has said very well, for others, and acting on that compassion through generosity. Togetherness is the true nature of joy. Amen.